My son finally brought home the wife we had been waiting for, and on top of it, she's pregnant. The son we had been so worried about was getting married, and we'd even get to see the face of our grandchild soon. My husband brought out his finest champagne, and the three of us toasted to the future. But then, when I was looking forward to meeting my first grandchild, my daughter-in-law hit me with the most shocking words. "You're a janitor, and that dirt could harm the baby, so we're cutting you off." A year passed in isolation. Then, out of nowhere, my son said he was bringing his family to our home. This was a sign that my son had made a decision. I'm Julia Hayes, 72 years old. Up until 2 years ago, I was working hard as a licensed architect, but I retired at 70 and now live with my husband in a high-rise condo in downtown Chicago. My husband was a skilled carpenter, but retired at 65. To support me, he learned to cook by taking classes, and now he's even better at it than I am. In his free time, my husband builds model kits or goes for walks to stay healthy. As for me, I thought I'd take it easy after retiring, but I couldn't just stay idle at home. A year ago, I signed up with a temp agency as a janitor and started cleaning office buildings in the city. Sometimes I even clean buildings that I helped design, and it brings back passionate memories and a sense of attachment. I like this job because it keeps me active and healthy. At work, no one knows I was a licensed architect with an annual income of $500,000, or that I live in a high-rise condo. People's jealousy can be quite troublesome. It's easier for them to think I'm just a poor old woman who has to keep working even after 70. My only real worry was my 40-year-old son. He works for a sporting goods company in the city. He loved sports since he was a kid and played baseball in college. He still loves watching baseball and other sports, so his job in sales as a sporting goods company seems to suit him well. But he's single. 5 years ago, he was engaged, but his fiancée betrayed him. To put it simply, she was after his money. According to my son, after she found out he lived in a high-rise condo with his parents, her attitude changed. She started spending more, asking about our health, and the unpleasant thing was when my son overheard her talking to another man about how she was looking forward to a rich life once she had inherited our money. Breaking up with her was painful, but my son managed to cut ties. "I can't marry someone who's just waiting for my parents to die." He said that with a bitter smile, but I know the damage to his heart was deep. Not long after, he moved out of the high-rise and into a one-bedroom apartment on his own. It was hard for my husband and me to see the high-rise become a source of trauma for our son. For the next 5 years, there was no talk of marriage or even dating. I know marriage isn't everything, and as long as he's happy, that's all that matters. But I wished he'd find a partner to share his life with. We bought our condo about 10 years ago. Before that, we lived in a single-family home in the suburbs of Illinois. The house was left to us by my husband's parents, and it was comfortable, but as we got older, climbing the stairs between the first and second floors became a challenge. Then one day, my husband made a surprising suggestion. "Hey, what do you think about selling this house and moving to the city for our retirement? I've been hearing a lot about those high-rise condos. They're convenient, and the security is solid." I had never designed a high-rise before, so I was definitely interested. Living in downtown Chicago would mean easy access to theaters and museums, and we wouldn't be bored after retirement. "If we just sit around doing nothing after we retire, we'll lose our minds." I smiled at his reasoning and agreed. So, we sold our longtime home and moved into a high-rise condo in Chicago's downtown area. Living here has turned out to be as great as everyone said it would be. The lower floors of the building have various commercial facilities and clinics, so you don't really have to leave the complex to get most things done. It's incredibly convenient. We carefully chose this place, so I don't think the property value will decrease much in the future. We also decided with the possibility in mind that we might eventually sell and move to a retirement home together. Our son visits us once a month, and we usually have dinner together. One day, when he came over, our son said, "Mom, Dad, the woman I'm seeing is pregnant, so we're getting married." Both my husband and I were shocked at first, but then we were overjoyed. We had worried about him And now he's getting married, and we'll even get to see our grandchild. My husband bought out his best bottle of wine, and the three of us celebrated. The woman's name is Michelle, and she's 35 years old. Apparently, they met at a baseball game, sitting next to each other. They were cheering for the same team, and after an exciting game, where their team won in a walk-off victory, they decided to celebrate together. It's great that you have something you both enjoy. At that moment, I imagined them taking their child to a baseball game, wearing matching caps, and felt incredibly happy. So I have a favor to ask. Can you keep it a secret that you live in a high-rise condo for a little while? It's not that I don't trust her. He's still a bit traumatized by something that happened in the past. I understand. If that's the case, it's not like we're keeping it a secret forever. Yeah, thanks. Once the baby is born, I think we'll be able to bring them over. I was really looking forward to that. My son and his fiancée decided, considering their age, to skip the wedding ceremony and just have a photo shoot. They planned to hold a small reception instead. My son said there was no need for a formal meeting between families, and that we could just greet each other at the reception. Apparently, it's becoming more common for couples to take a lazy approach to marriage. I thought it was a sensible decision. Instead of spending money on a wedding, it's better to save it for when they have kids. At the reception, I finally met my son's fiancée, Michelle. She seemed like a strong-willed woman who wasn't afraid to speak her mind. My son is gentle and a bit timid, so I thought it was good that she was the more confident one. My husband agreed. Her parents are also still working, even though they're in their late 50s. What caught my attention was when Michelle asked, "So are your parents retired?" My husband replied that he was, but I still work part-time cleaning office buildings. Michelle's expression changed when she heard that. "A cleaner?" she said, with a look that seemed to belittle the job. My son and Michelle started living together in a 2-bedroom condo near her parents' home. Since she's pregnant, she feels safer being close to her family. My commute has gotten a bit longer, but it's fine. He already seemed to be under her thumb, but my husband said that being a bit dominated is a sign of a peaceful home. Oh, really? When did I ever boss you around? Well, that's exactly what I mean. We laughed about it, but it started to become less of a joke over time. The next time my son visited our high-rise condo, I noticed he looked thin and worn out. She's been having a tough time with pregnancy, spending most of the day in bed. I've been doing all the housework, but I'm okay with that. He said it with a strained smile. Marriage is about helping each other through tough times. There are bound to be periods like this, but isn't she about 7 months along? She should be in the stable phase by now. Usually the symptoms ease up by then, but she still seems to be feeling unwell and stays in bed most of the time. It's different for everyone, but lying around too much can make labor more difficult. Maybe she should talk to her doctor. I ended up giving some advice because I just want the baby to be born healthy. A while later, I reached out to my son. It seemed that my advice hadn't been taken seriously. He told me that his wife might have to be hospitalized for preeclampsia. Worried, I rushed over to their apartment. Michelle had gained a lot of weight, probably over 40 pounds. You've gained too much weight. Preeclampsia is dangerous. You need to start eating healthier and do some light exercise. I was genuinely concerned when I said this, but it seemed to have rubbed Michelle the wrong way. What do you mean by that? The baby needs the extra nutrition. Gaining some weight is just part of it. That's outdated thinking. It's important to eat balanced meals and keep your weight gain in check. My son just stood there, not knowing what to say. Michelle, you'll be 36 by the time the baby is due. You need to be extra careful since it's considered a high-risk pregnancy. That might have been too much because Michelle snapped at me again. Why do you always have to make me feel so anxious? Just leave. My son walked me out of the apartment building. I'm sorry, I said. Maybe I said too much, but I'm really worried. I know, Mom. I'll talk to her. Don't worry, he reassured me. But a few weeks later, Michelle ended up in the hospital with preeclampsia. I wanted to visit, but my son advised against it. The hospital food is terrible, and it's making her irritable, he explained. Well, that's what happens when you eat whatever you want and barely move. I could only pray that everything would turn out okay and that I'd get to meet my grandchild. Thankfully, Michelle was discharged after about 10 days, and she started taking better care of herself. She managed to deliver a healthy baby boy. When my son called with the news, my husband and I were overjoyed. We rushed to the hospital to meet our grandson. Thank you for letting us meet him. You did great, I told Michelle. I didn't have this baby for you two, she replied coldly. People say that mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law often don't get along, but I didn't think that applied to us. Maybe Michelle saw me as just another intruding mother-in-law. I felt disappointed and a little depressed. Even so, when I heard from my son that they'd finally come home with the baby, my husband and I brought a gift and visited their apartment. The baby was so tiny and adorable. It reminded me of when my son was born, and I couldn't help but tear up. As I gently reached out to touch my grandson's hand, Michelle snapped, "Don't touch him with your dirty hands." I had just washed my hands in the bathroom when we arrived, and she saw that. "Hey, that's not fair," my son said, trying to calm her down. "Whose side are you on?" she shot back. "It's not about taking sides. Dad, Mom, you, and the baby, we're all family. We're all important." "What are you saying?" "Of course your wife and child should be the most important." The atmosphere became extremely tense, and a heated argument between the couple began. "Calm down, both of you," I tried to intervene. "Be quiet." "Do you have any idea whose fault this is?" Michelle's harsh words felt very hurtful, especially since we were just in-laws. "The dirty old cleaning lady is a bad influence on the baby. We're cutting ties." Michelle shouted madly. I was in shock and remained silent. Well, seeing this is probably a bad influence on the baby. My husband sighed. "Michelle, is that all you have to say?" Michelle didn't respond. I felt deeply saddened. My husband and I left the apartment with heavy hearts. We decided to stay away from our son and his family for a while. We hoped that, with time, things might improve. In the meantime, I looked forward to the photos of my grandchild that my son sent via line. The baby had recently started standing on his own, and the photos were incredibly cute. The more adorable the photos, the more I longed to hold him. What worried me was that all the photos were only of the baby alone. I wondered if things were still tense between the couple. As the baby's first year approached, my son contacted me. "We're coming over this Sunday with the baby. I told Michelle about the tower apartment. If it weren't for that, we wouldn't be visiting. I also mentioned that Mom used to be a top architect and earned quite a bit. She didn't believe it, so we're coming to show her." It seemed that things were going well between the couple. Michelle's attitude had softened, and they seemed to be getting along with us. I was curious, but decided to wait for the visit. "Oh, no way, it's true." When the door opened and they entered, Michelle exclaimed in surprise, "This place is so huge. How many rooms are there? And the view is amazing. 30 floors, right? It's gorgeous." Without greeting us, Michelle started exploring the apartment. My husband and I were absorbed in holding our grandchild, who was sleeping peacefully. Seeing the baby made us smile. When the baby woke up and started crying, Michelle didn't seem to notice. "Michelle, the baby is crying. Does he need milk?" Instead of responding, she was too busy making excuses. "Stop crying. Don't cry. And why didn't you tell me sooner?" Michelle started to show a very needy side, saying to my son, "Mom, you lied about being a cleaning lady. You are actually a top architect." "I am really working as a cleaner." "I don't really get it, but you're impressive. As for me, I'd live luxuriously if I had that kind of money." It's showing that she's just lazy and useless. Michelle continued to make inappropriate remarks. "So this tower apartment will be ours when your parents die, right?" "No, it won't." "What? What do you mean?" "I'm going to separate from you. I'll get custody of the children." "What are you talking about? Stop making such bad jokes." "This isn't a joke. I've tolerated you idling with housework and child rearing. I had to have a child with you, so you should be thankful. Even though she's not young herself, what she's saying is absurd. However, I can't live with someone who's looking forward to my parents' deaths. Do you understand why I kept quiet about the tower apartment and Mom's job? And why did I bring you here today? My son looked depressed. What are you saying? This child is my own. It's unthinkable to divorce and give up custody. Okay, I understand. Then I'll make sure to pay child support, but please divorce me. Are you telling me to become a single mother and live in an apartment? That's not an option. If we don't divorce, we can all live together in the tower apartment. It became clear that Michelle was more interested in the tower apartment than in the custody of the child. Bringing Michelle here might have been my son's way of giving her one last chance. For the sake of the child, it would be better not to divorce if possible. Had Michelle shown more consideration for us, her in-laws, my son might not have considered divorce. However, once words are spoken, they cannot be taken back. Once our son made up his mind, he did not accept Michelle's attempts to manipulate him. I have recorded evidence of you not doing housework or childcare, and I have also recorded your behavior since we arrived here. What? You're a liar and a coward. You're the worst. Michelle turned pale. If that's the case, let's discuss it through a lawyer. But Michelle, I haven't forgot that you cut ties with us after telling us not to touch the baby with dirty hands. Yes, you declared the end of ties yourself. It's too late now to say you want to live together. When we said this, Michelle could only collapse in defeat and muttered complaints as she staggered out of the room. So my husband and I ended up living in the tower apartment with our son and grandchild. Our son was depressed for a while, wondering why I always seemed to make the wrong decisions. I'm sorry for causing trouble by wanting to live in a tower apartment. I don't think it's his fault, but I understand feeling responsible. It's just a coincidence, just a string of bad luck. I'm sure you'll find a good opportunity eventually. Even though I said this, our son replied with a slight sad smile. No, it's okay. I have my son, and both my parents are healthy. I'm happy enough. After divorcing and returning to her parents' house, Michelle frequently left her child with them to play. Her parents were frustrated and even rebuked her for having debts and not working. Ironically, she found work as a cleaner, the job she once looked down on, and was treated poorly as an incompetent old lady. It's no surprise that people at her workplace dislike her after her attitude. Occasionally, Michelle sent messages to our son, wanting to reconcile, but he now ignores them without reading. My husband and I were overjoyed to live with our grandchild, but taking care of him at over 70 years old turned out to be far more challenging than expected. While it's easy to enjoy a grandchild who visits occasionally, we had completely forgotten how tough full-time childcare can be. Despite the fact that his wife had nearly abandoned household chores and childcare, the son, who had worked and taken care of the kids for a year, was truly admirable. Mom and Dad, you seem tired, right? You should get a babysitter, he suggested. We'd decided to hire a babysitter. A 36-year-old single mother named Emily will be coming in from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. on weekdays to take care of our grandson. She has a 10-year-old daughter and a 7-year-old son. As a mother who is currently raising her own kids, she's incredibly efficient, and as a single mother managing her household, she is very hardworking. She even makes us meals sometimes. Occasionally, my husband and I cook and eat together with her. The hours from 10 to 4 are really helpful. She can drop off the kids at school, go to work, and still manage to be home in time to prepare dinner. We invited her and her children to visit us over weekends. Is it okay if I bring my own kids along? They were really impressed when I told them that I work in a high-rise apartment. They'd love to see it. Emily's children are polite, energetic, and adorable. They quickly became friends with our almost 2-year-old grandchild. The high-rise is amazing. The cars look so small from up here. Watching the kids enjoy themselves is wonderful. The younger boy was fascinated by my husband's model kits, and my husband proudly showed off various models of robots and fighter jets. Since Emily has weekends off, it was the first time she met our son. Nice to meet you. Thanks for taking care of us. Thank you for having us. as they both bowed and laughed, saying, "It feels a bit strange, doesn't it?" The real reason we invited Emily and her kids was because we wanted to introduce her to our son. Both my husband and I agreed that she would make a great daughter-in-law. However, we didn't want to force anything, so after the introduction, we decided to leave things up to them. Emily will continue to take care of our grandchild. We have shared some of our family situation with her. I was shocked that a mother could neglect such a lovely child. Sitting at the living room table, Emily and our son watched the kids play.
It's really nice. The sound of children laughing is wonderful.
Yes, it is. And it's so lovely that your parents cook together in the kitchen. That's very special.
Since the kitchen is open, we could hear their conversation. My dad learned to cook at a culinary school after retiring to help my mom,
which made my husband blush. I wish I had a marriage like that, but I messed up. I'm also the one who failed. I exchanged a knowing glance with my husband, who nodded.
By the way, Emily, would you like to live in a high-rise like this?
Well, it's a wonderful place, but I think what matters more is who you live with rather than where you live. Emily gave what was probably a perfect answer. At that moment, I was sure that our son had fallen in love with her. From then on, they started visiting us on weekends, and we would go out together with our grandchild. They looked like a happy family who had been together for years. Maybe Emily, being smart, had managed to address our son's past traumas and captured his heart. If so, that's fine with me. I believe she'll continue to build a happy family without revealing any flaws. After a year of close family interactions, our son formally told us,
"I'm planning to propose to Emily. Will you support me?"
Finally, right?
Yeah, I've been waiting for your call. Of course we do.
Yes, absolutely.